Hello, I'm Eric Naldo, and let's talk today about the experiments legally that can be done in France or in other countries about this new tool that comes in our lives, autonomous vehicles. Our law firm is developing a series of mini-videos about it. And now, today, how do we experiment to prepare this revolution? First of all, what are we talking about there? There's in fact all categorization that is applicable in most countries. Some countries, like the US, have different patterns, but there are in France and most countries categorization between 0, the car is not autonomous at all, to 5, the car is completely autonomous, doesn't even need a driver. Okay? Most experiments are done on level 3 and 4. Some countries are more advanced than that and experience categorization 5. Recently, mid-February 2019, the French President, Emmanuel Macron, announced new elements about the experiments about the autonomous vehicles, with lines especially for these cars, which is a way to make it compatible with today's version of the international treaties, Vienna Treaty of 1968, about the cars, and with then experiments about category 5 vehicles. But most experiments today in the world are being done about levels 3 and 4. At level 3, there is a system of autonomous driving which controls all functioning of dynamic driving. The driver has only to stay watchful to be able to take control whenever required. This is completely in compliance with the French law at the stage of experiments and sometimes even at the stage of driving. You have Tesla who allows it, and in fact Tesla is completely, in terms of software, ready for category 5. Some others are at the same level of development, some are not. When you have a system of automatic driving, the driver interferes only if required, really, the vehicle to be able to act alone and appropriately. That's the level 4. In fact, there can be debates between when starts and when ends the levels 4 and 3. With regards to this, it was required to bring an amendment to the Vienna Agreement Treaty, International Treaty of 1968, because at the time, of course, in 1968 we didn't discuss autonomous vehicles. That was a time of autonomous people, but not vehicles. Thus, we modified it, and 2005 that started to be applicable in 2006, and as now, it's enforceable. But there's a big debate about it. Is today's version of that Vienna Treaty allowing us to experiment level 4 and even 5 in our countries or not? The French Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Conseil d'État have considered, Conseil d'État in a non-contentious opinion in June 2018, that, oh no, we cannot do as far as 5 and some 4s experiment in all streets with today's version of that Vienna Treaty. Most countries don't agree with this at all, saying at least for 4 there should be no problem, because what is enforced by the Vienna Treaty is that we should have a driver able to control the car. But as long as we have a driver, I think we're good. It's not the Conseil d'État position, and it's not probably the recent position of the French President, Emmanuel Macron. Maybe we'll have then to change the French regulations about it. So I would say France is wrong on that, except probably for experience in parkings, because in parkings then you have to take off the driver to have the car self-park, and so, in a very efficient way, which means with no room between the cars, so not enough room for the driver. So that's something that will be debated in France. In nearly every country, you have topics like that, of course, that are dealt with globally. Solutions that are saying we can experiment level 4, or no, we have to stop at level 3 globally. Or some say, no, we can go as far as level 5. So France globally will stop at level 4, but it's not that precise. That's what we can complain about today in France. But still, we have regulations. We have the Article 37 of the Energy Transition for Growth Act. what we call une loi, that was adopted in 2015. There is a décret, order of 2016, which allows to experiment, but which does not elaborate much. More interesting, in May 2018, a more comprehensive program, a real complete project about developing the autonomous vehicle in France, has been developed by the government. And today, the main question is to experiment and implement the decree of March 28th of 2018 about it, and to adapt for the new elements that will come after our President's announcement in mid-February 2019. Thus, we can conduct experiments with an autonomous vehicle, and we can even plan, in some cases, the experiment on streets open to public. Then people will have, in France, but most countries have the same kind of solutions, a temporary traffic allowance, a special kind of driver license with no driver for this purpose. This framework is valid for 2 years in the French system and may be renewed once. But for the public transportation of people, for the public transports, then you have special allowances with a more serious, more strict regulation that has been enforced. We also have to make it compatible with, especially for the use of data, with the National Commission on Informatics and Liberty decisions. They got a special pack for that, legal pack for that, and the European Parliament's regulation of the 27th of April 2016 concerning privacy and personal information safeguards and physical persons. Moreover, the European Parliament called for a whole series of reform to prepare all this, especially with a resolution of the 16th of February 2017. But it does not have an immediate operational content. Those who will use these tools will have to take into consideration a whole set of technical specifications, ethical issues, legal responsibilities, question of torts. The local authorities will have some adjustments and adaptations to take care of. So let's see the 2 videos made on these topics. Moreover, practically speaking, there's also a whole set of minor problems to take care of and solve. Today, the autonomous vehicles are not very good in knowing when they can decide to get out and drive or not, when it rains, snows, when the street is icy. They don't always know well to understand the borders between the street itself and the sidewalk, especially for the sidewalks that are adapted for disabled persons. So all that needs more interaction and more machine learning. We also discover that there are different ways to make machine learning that can lead to different kind of solutions long term. And then, of course, there's the problem of adaptation to human beings, drivers, other drivers, the police. All that need to be taken into account. And it's necessary to know that our current legislation in criminal law and torts is globally today compatible with these new tools. It's applicable. Let's see our video on that topic. But it's not very well adapted. We have solutions, not very good solutions. So all that will be also an adaptation that will be needed. Thus, there's a further reason to conduct cautiously the experiments. If we go too slowly, we head for disaster because the whole world is venturing into it, and we cannot be backwards in that. So, we have all the reasons to plunge into this fascinating subject and watch our other videos. And fears and hopes arising from these practices on the issues of ethics and responsibilities and torts, which underscores and entails on community adaptations that will have to be taken into account. So thank you, and see you soon for our other videos.